Let's talk to Conservative MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant. Good morning, Michael. Now, you've been a big supporter of Boris Johnson. You said it was a tragedy that he was removed. But looking at this Privileges Committee investigation, the general understanding in the media had been that the Prime Minister would have had to deliberately mislead Parliament. Now it appears that this committee is saying that even if he didn't know he was misleading Parliament, he could still be found guilty.
That's right. The definition of guilt, I'm just going to read you, actually, if I may, a brief definition. The standard common law test of criminal liability is expressed in mens rea, and mens rea is showing intent. Mens rea literally means guilty mind. As a general rule, someone who acted without mental fault is not liable in criminal law. And in the past, that is precisely how the Privileges Committee has addressed these issues. And it's interesting, by the way, that Harriet Harman is now currently the chairman, because the previous chairman was Chris Bryant, who reclused himself because he'd made a number of tweets, all of which said that Boris was guilty of lying to the House. So they appointed Harriet Harman instead. And yet Harriet Harman, maybe not quite as many tweets as Chris Bryant, has also said the same publicly. So she already has a view before the inquiry has even begun. And many people will think, including me, that this change in the rules and the appointment of Harriet Harman is a deliberate attempt by the Privileges Committee of the House of Commons not only to fine Boris Johnson in some respect, but also to get rid of Boris Johnson altogether, because they even went to the lengths of contacting the Speaker of the House of Commons, where the provisions of the Act would apply, it says. And what is the Act? It's the Recall of MPs Act. And what that would mean is it could lead to Boris Johnson having to fight a by-election because 10% of the population of Uxbridge, which is his constituency, might be called upon to put their names forward and say a by-election needs to be called, which is exactly what Harriet Harman and the Labour Party want.
That is the most extraordinary charge there. Now, we must say on the Privileges Committee, a majority of the members are Conservative, despite the chair being of the Labour Party. I wonder how much credence you put with the statement that the Privileges Committee put out, not just that intent won't be taken into account for the verdict, but they did say that intent would be taken into account for the punishment that they may or may not then give out. Potentially, they may want to just embarrass Boris Johnson by saying guilty and then potentially not give him a very harsh punishment if they say that he was not intending to mislead the House. If he genuinely believed that the very miserable little leaving do that he was pictured going to for his former spokesman Lee Cain was not a rule-breaking event, or indeed actually he only was found by the police to have broken rules on one occasion, which was that rather miserable-looking party or gathering in the Cabinet Office before a meeting, the one that Rishi Sunak attended as well. I suppose it's reasonable to imagine in the mind of Boris Johnson he may not have thought he was breaking the rules at that stage. The Privileges Committee now saying they will take that into account, but only in terms of looking at what punishment they offer.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of ifs there, isn't there, Tom? I mean, I don't even think that he, should be found guilty, because, as I say, the whole principle is, did he intend to break or to lie to the House when he said that I do not believe that any rules have been broken? Now, a Prime Minister will take advice from his senior civil servants. And we know that the senior civil servant himself was fined because the senior civil servant also took the view they weren't breaking the rules. Why? Because this was a working environment and there were special rules which applied to those people who'd been working together all day in a confined environment where you couldn't have outsiders coming in. So there was no question of spreading the disease. So they thought they were operating within the law. That's the civil servants who were advising Boris. So Boris himself felt, no, we haven't broken any laws. And you know what? When's a party a party? If a couple of people meet for a quick drink of water outside their main office by the chilled water cooler and start chatting about yesterday's TV, is that a party? Now, if alcohol is served, is that a party? If you're having a quiet drink, I don't think that is a party at the end of the day. And of course, many of the events took place when Boris wasn't even there. Most of these events took place on a Friday when Boris Johnson was 45 miles away at Chequers. So, you know, this is quite extraordinary. And many people feel this is a Privileges Committee stitch-up. And the fact they've even contacted the Speaker to see whether the Recall Act would apply suggests that they've already made a decision in their own minds in advance of the inquiry.
Now, Michael Fabricant, I did want to get your view on another case of rule breaking in Parliament. Just yesterday, it was found that the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, was found to have broken the MP Code of Conduct 8 times. Now, as Keir Starmer's spokesman has said that he has apologised to the Commissioner for what they call an inadvertent error and has assured that this won't happen again. But what's your response to Sir Keir Starmer having been found to breach these rules 8 times?
My response is double standards. Boris apologised to the House when he found out that he had inadvertently broken the rules. You know, what do we hear from Keir Starmer? Oh, he's apologised 8 times, 8 times, for heaven's sake, with a team of people around him. He broke the rules, and that's going to be the end of it, it would seem. Are the Privileges Committee and Harriet Harman going to look at him? No, they're not. Double standards, a stitch-up, and actually quite disgraceful, and it brings the House of Commons and its regulatory methodology into complete disrepute. We had the same thing, by the way, with Owen Paterson. Not that I thought that Owen Paterson was innocent, I did not. But you did have a situation where the person who was conducting the inquiry was not only judge but jury as well, and announced in advance that she thought that Owen Paterson was guilty. Well, as I say, I think Owen Paterson was guilty, but you can't have regulation like that. And this is what is happening again with Keir Starmer. It's one rule for one, a different rule for someone else. And that is not justice.
Now, I think, to be fair, I should say that the Standards Commissioner did count these 8 rule breaches as minor. But I think, Michael, you make a very fair point there about the principle of this really mattering. Well, it's been a joy to have you on the show, Michael Fabricant. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really interesting stuff.